Aggressive powerhouses genetically mutated to survive the Wasteland. They trump humans in almost every aspect in terms of survival, but what is a super mutant? Where do they come from? How are they made? And who is in charge? A super mutant is the result of a human being exposed to the forced evolutionary virus, or FEV. These mutants are typically far larger than their former selves, exiting with incredible strength, endurance, and also immunity to both disease and radiation. More often than not, the dipping procedure leaves the super mutant with inferior intelligence, limited speech, and uncontrollable rage. But this isn't always the case, as you will soon learn. The very first step to creating a super mutant happened at the West Tech Research Facility in Southern California, where 15 chimpanzees were infected with a new hybrid batch of FEV known as batch 11111. Their growth and immunity levels was unlike anything the researchers had ever seen. They even attempted to induce cancers through radiological and chemical agents to no avail. The chimpanzees were simply immune to their effects. The test subjects had also grown increasingly aggressive, which forced the science team to isolate them. Once the data was collected, all test subjects were terminated, and the FEV research was transferred to the Mariposa military base, Vault 87, and the West Tech Research Center in Appalachia for more inhumane studies. In Fallout 1, the majority of the super mutants seen wandering the wasteland were created by the Master after his discovery of the FEV at the Mariposa military base. He began experimenting with the FEV on small animals, but quickly grew bored and moved on to humans. He believed that the only way to eliminate conflict between humans was to remove their differences and unite them under one agenda by the name of Unity, also known as the Master's Army. Those that wanted to join his cause were willingly transformed into super mutants and entered their ranks, while those that wanted no such thing were given two choices: sterilization or death. But little did the Master know that his perfect creations were unable to procreate, and without any humans to dip, they too would eventually pass. This army, as likely as it was to succeed, was thwarted by the Vault Dweller to ensure his vault's safety. In Fallout 2, those left behind after the Master's defeat reacted in a number of different ways. Some mutants became raiders, others integrated into human societies, joining other armed forces such as the NCR Rangers, while few went on to create their very own communities such as Broken Hills, where mutants, ghouls, and humans could all live in relative peace. One thing that wasn't expected was the emergence of second-generation mutants. Once again, they were created through the use of FEV at the Mariposa military base, although this time it was an accident. These mutants were once miners from Redding, abducted by the Enclave and forced to excavate the base. The miners were given no protective equipment and, as a result, were exposed to the FEV still inside, which transformed them into super mutants. Shortly after the Enclave found a pure sample of FEV, their entire reason for being at the base in the first place, which then meant they no longer had use for those they forced to dig, and the mutant miners knew it, which is why they fought back, using their new strength to their advantage. Having what they came for, the Enclave retreated to the entrance and sealed the mutants inside. In Fallout New Vegas, super mutants are far less common, but like Broken Hills, they have once again tried to make something of a normal life, this time at the pre-war ski resort in Mount Charleston, consisting of both first-generation mutants from the Master's Army and second-generation mutants from the Enclave excavations. Despite their peaceful presence, not all humans are accepting. Norton, a mercenary, has been hired by the NCR to get the mutants to move on, or to provoke them into attacking so they can kill them. This is all in lieu of some NCR livestock turning up dead and the super mutants being an easy target to blame. Marcus, a first-generation mutant, understands that if they retaliate, it gives the NCR an excuse to wipe out Jacobstown, and instead resorts to a more peaceful approach, knowing it is the best outcome for his kind. In Fallout 3, super mutants once again rear their ugly heads, but this time through a different strain of FEV dubbed the Evolutionary Experimentation Program, or EEP. The scientists within Vault 87 were studying the effects of the EEP on humans, trying to reliably alter their DNA so they could easily survive a post-nuclear environment. Despite their significant increase in size, strength, and immunity, the mutants suffered with mental illnesses, resulting in extreme aggression and violent tendencies. In spite of the danger, the scientists continued their experiments up until 1 year after the Great War, when the mutants broke free from their holding cells and took control of the vault, transforming any humans still inside and strengthening their numbers. 200 years later, super mutants are found all over the capital Wasteland. They are extremely hostile and obsessed with preserving their species due to the fact they can't reproduce. Instead, locals and wanderers are kidnapped and taken to Vault 87 to be transformed. Frequent use of their FEV supply over such a long time has resulted in a shortage of what the mutants call green stuff, resulting in their exploration into the city to find more. In Fallout 4, super mutants were created by the Institute through a sample of FEV. How they came to be in possession of a sample is unknown, only that they did so through very secretive means, so secret that even we aren't allowed to know. Any person who wouldn't be missed was abducted by the Institute and forcefully subjected to the modified FEV. The mutations were extensively monitored and investigated, with any mutation considered a success, tagged and discarded. In other words, the Institute was creating super mutants and releasing them into the Wasteland. These mutants are intelligent, forming unique tribes, wearing armor, taming attack dogs, and even using humans as a lure, as is the case with Rex Goodman in Trinity Tower. One thing of interest is that this strain of FEV is the only one to have been cured. Zax 1.2 from the West Tech Research Facility in New California speculated that a cure for the FEV mutants was unlikely, but a scientist by the name of Brian Virgil was able to reverse his mutation. The serum he invented had the ability to recreate his original DNA while simultaneously overwriting the mutated cells within his system, therefore returning him back to his human form. This serum is tailored to his particular strain of FEV, but it could be refined to cure other strains. According to Virgil, this could take decades to accomplish, but theoretically it would be possible to not only rid the New England Commonwealth of super mutants, but also the other 12 Commonwealths as well. In Fallout 76, the source of the super mutants is, as always, the result of experimenting with FEV. While the West Tech Research Facility in New California was experimenting with animals, the Appalachian branch took things a step further and experimented with humans. Due to the unpredictability of FEV, the researchers' objective was to identify a viable strain of FEV that could be used reliably. This led to a variety of questions, but perhaps the most important one was, what are the effects of long-term low-level exposure to FEV? In order to answer this question, the researchers infected the town's water supply with FEV and monitored the effects. Shortly after the experiment began, an outbreak of what they believed to be a rare strain of flu plagued the townsfolk. In response to this flu, the town was sealed and company guards patrolled the perimeter. Those that attempted to leave the town were hunted down and killed, and those that reached out to the company for help were isolated for further observation. Before long, the entire town was mutating into super mutants. When the Great War interrupted their experiments, the scientists were left without orders and abandoned the facility. Years later, the enclave would rediscover the facility and continue the scientists' work, both creating and releasing the super mutants into the surrounding regions. Super mutants are unable to continue their species through more conventional methods. While primary sexual characteristics are unaffected, the FEV perceives their reproductive organs as damaged DNA and does what the virus believes is a correction. In actuality, it's sterilizing the host. This means their only choice to continue as a species is through the conversion of more humans. Confusion began back in Fallout 2, after a mutant named Marcus joked about getting prostitutes in the cat's paw pregnant, saying that it only takes a few years to get the juices flowing again, giving the impression that they weren't sterile and even possessed the ability to impregnate humans. Chris Avellone would later correct this issue as a mere joke, although I do wonder what the offspring of a human and a super mutant might look like. Genetic changes brought upon by the Mariposa strain are achieved through recursive growth patterns caused by the FEV. For the mutation to succeed, the human needs to have little to no radiation damage and no previous exposure to the mutated FEV, which was cast into the atmosphere from the damaged West Tech research facility. Those that have come into contact with the mutated FEV will suffer a massive overhaul of the body's systems, leading to organ failure and death. Those that have successfully mutated increase in both height and weight, with muscle accounting for over 75% of their total mass, while bone and tissue are 10% and fat 3 to 5%. This increase in weight leads to a change in posture, a hunched back being the most prominent result. Their skin changes colour to grey, although this will change over time to green as the mutant ages. Their skin is much thicker than ours, more resistant to cuts, bruises and burns, but damaged or destroyed tissue will not regenerate, leading to permanent scarring or loss of appendages. The mutation does have a very small chance to increase intelligence, as is seen with the Lieutenant, who is arguably the greatest super mutant to ever live. Other mutants retain their pre-dipping intellect, but the majority of them seem to experience a loss of around 30%. This loss is the result of the brain increasing in size, which disfigures and damages pre-existing neural patterns, causing permanent memory loss, which is why most mutants can't seem to remember their past. Perhaps the most impressive effect of the dipping procedure is the receival of immortality. The Mariposa strain of FEV increases cell regeneration rate that exceeds cell death rate, preventing DNA from degenerating through age, allowing super mutants to live indefinitely. The inferior strain of FEV used in Vault 87 has the same effects previously mentioned, but it does have one major difference, which could be linked to how the FEV is applied to the subject. Vault dwellers were exposed a single time to airborne particulate under isolated conditions. After exposure, changes typically occurred within 3 days. Rapid increase of muscle mass, skeletal remodeling, and removal of all visible sexual characteristics and hair, leaving all those exposed to the FEV with a uniformed appearance. At 10 days, the skin thickens, as well as taking on a combination of yellow and green colours. By day 14, subjects seem to regress to a primitive state, exhibiting aggression towards all non-mutants, but they do still possess a level of intelligence. They have minimal speech that's spoken with care due to their permanent tight snarls. They can operate machinery and even display basic tactics in combat. The difference worth noting is that those subjected to this strain continuously grow, with those eluding death for many years reaching the size of a small building. It is unknown just how big these mutants can grow. We see several behemoths of a similar size, likely meaning that those that grow any bigger either collapse beneath their own weight or struggle to find enough food and die of starvation. Institute mutants differ from Vault 87 mutants in many ways. The most visible is their mouths are more human and are able to move during speech, similar to the Mariposa mutants. They're also much shorter than their DC cousins, approximately 0.31 meters shorter. Their skin is also darker and their muscles are less prominent, leading to the belief that because they are more intelligent, they don't require as much muscle, instead using trained attack dogs and luring humans into traps. The existence of super mutant behemoths in the Commonwealth seem to suggest they have a connection with the Vault 87 strain, or some kind of flaw in their own strain that they have yet to wrinkle out. Super mutant territory tends to be identifiable by the twisted metal, spikes and gore bags littering the area. They don't seem particularly fussed with where they call home, mostly they stay where they were made. But there are makeshift camps near human settlements where mutants wait to catch stragglers and either convert them or consume them. The mutants that don't have a choice to stay where they were made, such as the Institute mutants, seem to have settled down wherever they so choose, most likely selecting a home based on the abundance of food. The hierarchy of super mutants is a difficult thing to understand. In Fallout 1 they banded together beneath the Master, who was undoubtedly more intelligent and was also their creator, leading to unquestionable loyalty. But in Fallout 2, when the Master was no longer there, they disbanded and went their separate ways, showing they do have individual thoughts as to what they want. In Fallout 3 they seem to be cooperating without a leader, all focused on a common cause. But in Fallout New Vegas, they can be found in Jacobstown following Marcus, or at Black Mountain under the reign of Tabitha, who calls the super mutants dum-dums, indicating that they might not be able to think for themselves and are instead being taken advantage of. In Fallout 4, the super mutants once again display different wants, some aiming to conquer, others a quiet refuge, showing that like humans, they aren't all the same. One thing to note is that the larger the mutant, the greater the title, going from brutes up to overlords and even behemoths, suggesting that it may play a part in leadership. An example of this is Grun, the behemoth leader of a super mutant group in Far Harbor, although one example isn't enough to believe this is always the case, and more often than not, it is the most ruthless or intelligent super mutant leading the group, if there's a leader at all, that is. Deadeye is an example of how a super mutant copes with losing their eyesight. He can be found residing inside Fraternal Post 115, where he spends his time listening to Diamond City radio, perhaps enjoying the sounds now that his eyesight no longer works. The sole survivor can avoid detection by sneaking, but only up to a certain distance, as Deadeye will hear and alert the mutants of an intruder. It's strange to think that the other mutants didn't just discard him, but this could be down to them being Institute mutants who have a greater intelligence and are simply using what he has left to their advantage. Some super mutants clutch a mini-nuke in their fist and charge the enemy with the intent of killing them at the cost of their own life. I find this really strange, considering a mini-nuke could just be thrown by a super mutant and still achieve the same outcome, only without the need of unnecessary death. The only reason I can think of as to why a super mutant would do this is they can't really think for themselves, and the other mutants want them gone, but still want to use them for something useful. There is no giant hamster wheel to power their spotlights, so this seems to be the next best thing. Two birds with one nuke. Is it wrong to say that a super mutant is no longer human? But what does it mean to be human? To have desires, emotions, aspirations? These are things that all super mutants possess, whether it be to eliminate all humans, to pursue a hobby such as dog breeding, or to build a place where like-minded individuals can come together. Despite their appearance and their inability to breed, there is a fine line between humans and super mutants. They both have language, rules, and behaviours that, if anything, show just how similar the two of them are. Graham, a friendly super mutant, understands what it is to care for an animal. Fawkes, who was locked away for thinking differently, ached for his freedom. Gale, who was alone for such a long time, found the unlikely friendship with Rara, a human girl. And the lieutenant, who, despite it costing him his life, held on to his faith to the very end. If this doesn't show how human they really are, then I don't know what will. Be sure to show your support by liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already for more Fallout content. If there's anything you would like to see in a later video, leave a comment and I'll see what I can do. With that said, thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.